been wanting to talk to Joe Lauzon for quite some time, especially as it pertains to the recent fighter retreat, his trip to Reebok HQ, and a couple other things. Let's welcome him in right now via the magic of Skype. There he is, the one and only Joe Lauzon. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
It's been a while since we had you on the show, so I appreciate you coming on. It's good to talk to you.
Oh, good to talk with you too. I thought you were maybe a little mad at me.
No, why? Should we clear this up? You texted me this. Why would you think I'm mad at you?
I didn't think you're mad, but I feel like I'll never break something that I'm not supposed to break. And like the last couple text messages I had from you were like, "Hey, can you confirm this fight?" And I just don't respond. So that's the only time I don't get back to you.
Okay,
I don't know. Maybe a little.
I'll reveal a secret here. My plan of attack is I'll text someone like, "Hey, are you there?" And then usually, like someone like you, you're a very quick replier, which I appreciate greatly. You'll reply, "Yeah, what's up?" And then I'll ask the question. I learned this because in the past I would just ask the question, giving you the out not to respond.
No
exactly.
Yeah.
So now I know you're there, and then you don't respond. So I'm like, all right, Joe's a company guy, no hard feelings, but I have to at least ask, because that's part of doing my due diligence.
Of course.
But
I understand.
I don't hold it against you. I'm not mad at you. I don't hold a grudge. Just for the record.
All right.
But if you want to give me like a wink or a thumbs up, I'll never tell. I'll go to jail before I outed a source. That's journalism 101.
I mean, if I say no, then it's a no, and if I don't say anything, then you kind of got an idea.
You could say no comments, or I can't confirm that at this time.
Yeah. Or if you get no response, it's probably a good chance.
Okay. See, now we're on to something. See, that's
see how it works. Yeah.
You just got back from Iraq.
I did.
What were you doing there?
It was awesome. So basically, I went out with a company. I went out with them like back in 2008. I went out to Iraq with this company called Pro Sports MVP. And it's basically like a goodwill trip. Go out and visit a whole bunch of, armed forces and, do meet and greets and do a little training with them and let them show us all their cool stuff. And we show them some cool stuff. I was there. I was in Iraq for 6 days, but it was like an 8-day trip because of the travel and all that. A lot of travel.
Any concerns when you're there? Like, do you feel uncomfortable at all? Any safety concerns?
I felt much safer when I got home, but I never felt unsafe. We're always well protected. And the last thing they want is for anything to happen with any of us.
Sure.
But definitely felt nice. Landing in DC and being back in the United States. That was a good feeling.
Where do you sleep?
So we slept pretty much right at the airport. Not at the military airport, like where the airstrip is.
Yeah.
So we slept in a tent. So it was me, Sam Alvey, Jake Ellenberger, Diego Sanchez, and then the girls I brought out with Emily Miller and Janie B, who are World Series of Fighting ring cut girls.
Okay.
So they were off in like a tent, but we were all together.
Wow. Any scuffles between the fighters in the tent? Like, did it get testy at times?
No, we were all good. We're all good. It was fun. We got to train a little bit with each other the last night. I got to roll with Ellenberger a good amount. But we just, we grappled and rolled around with guys at like 3 or 4 different bases. It was a really good time. We had a lot of fun.
And are you flying commercial there?
Yep. So I flew Boston to DC. We all met in DC. So everyone else flew from like LA and all over the place. We all met in DC. And then we flew to Vienna, Austria, which was so it was 2 hours to DC, 10 hours to Vienna, Austria, and then 3 hours to Erbil, which is in Iraq.
And when you're going Austria to Iraq, is that a commercial flight or is that?
So that was all commercial. That was all commercial.
Oh wow!
And then the military base is right next to the Erbil airport. So that was like a 2-minute drive.
And just curious, like, do you go to, like, what is life like in Iraq these days? I mean, you don't hear about it as much in the news.
So we're in Kurdistan, which is like it's in Iraq, but it's like a segment of Iraq that I think is breaking off in the next couple of months. So I mean, it was good. I mean, everyone was like super positive about stuff. It sounds like basically the military is doing like basically using all the tech and drones and air support and bombs and missiles and all that kind of stuff. And we're not really sending a lot of people, boots on the ground in there. It's more so the Iraqi army that's doing that. So everyone was positive. I mean, it's just been really successful for them. It seems like.
All right.
It's really, really good. Everyone was positive.
Well, good for you. Glad you came home safe, and glad that we can talk. It's interesting that you're wearing the Reebok sweatshirt, because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on. You were just so after the fighter retreat, which had all kinds of stories coming out of it as it pertains to Reebok. You went to the Reebok HQ, right?
Yes. So I've been there quite a few times. They're like maybe 15 minutes from my gym.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I've been over there. I've probably been there like half a dozen times now.
Okay.
But I went over there and we had talked about some stuff at the retreat, and they kind of gave me some heads up on some stuff that was coming down the pipe, and I went over there to actually see stuff.
So what do you do? Like, is this your idea to go there, or do they call you and ask you to come visit?
It's been both. You know, like I've been there 6 times in the last year. You know, there's been a couple times we've requested to go over there and just kind of check things out. But they've asked me over there, you know, quite a few times.
And so this particular trip, because I saw that you tweeted about it, and you seem like you're, I guess, positive about the future and everything, coming off of what happened with Cajun Johnson and some of the concerns that were voiced, and, you know, the drama, if you will. What was the vibe like? What was the meeting about when you met with them this most recent time?
So meeting was good. I mean, it's always good when I go over there because they understand that I understand what's going on, and I think I have a better picture of everything than most people. So basically, long story short, the Reebok came to terms with the UFC about coming up with this deal. It's like something like $70 million over 72 months, right?
Yeah.
So 6 years. So they basically come up with this deal where they're going to sponsor all these different fighters, and the UFC made the best deal that they thought was in the fighters' best interest, right? So like they thought that they talked to some people about what they were making in sponsors. They thought they were going to have everyone was going to be happy with Reebok not having to chase all these smaller sponsors, and they signed this deal, right? So now everything is like there's contracts, everything's in paper, everything's in writing. Like there's no going and changing this. There's no going like, oh, what do you think about doing this instead? It's like it's an agreement. It's a signed deal. Like there's no changing it. There's no wiggle room there. And I think that all the fighters seem to think that, like, if they complain on Twitter, it's going to help and it's going to change things. And, like, that's so the wrong way to go about it. You know, I talked about it at the athlete retreat about how, you know, basically Reebok spent all this money. So they spent $70 million to, you know, sponsor all these athletes, right? And they're not making a return on their investment. You know, they're spending $70 million in hopes they're going to make, you know, $100 million or $200 million, or they're going to make more money back. But they're not, because all these fighters are being negative. So my whole thing is that, you know, we've basically become toxic at this point. You know, all these different, you know, there's no way that Nike or Under Armour or some other sponsor is going to come in, because the UFC took the best offer they got, right? So Reebok offered the most money. It's not like that Nike came in was going to do more money, and the UFC's like, oh, no, we're going to go with Reebok instead, right? They went with the best offer. So Reebok was willing to spend the most and take a gamble on us, and it's backfired. It shot them in the face, right? It has not worked out well at all. So all these fighters complaining is not gonna, you know, look good for someone else coming in later down the line. When this deal is over, sponsors are going to be pretty much done as far as fighters go with apparel, right? So they're just going to be like, oh, you guys ruined it. You guys screwed yourself. So my whole thing is, you know, if we're more positive about stuff and we're pro Reebok, Reebok will make some money. And then hopefully Reebok will either renew, or someone else will see that Reebok made money and someone else will come in over the top and come in with more money. But it's like, it's so backwards of fighters thinking that, like, one, it's super unprofessional. You know, like I understand what Cajun Johnson was getting at. And in the end, it kind of worked out well that we actually had that second meeting when they talked to us about stuff. But that was like a really unprofessional, bad way to go about things. You know, I think it would have, you know, when we were all together, that was fine. But could have directed that towards someone at the UFC, not at Reebok. You know what I mean? Like, it's because it's really almost all the issues are not really Reebok issues. You know, like the money was negotiated by the UFC, right? Reebok's not even, oh, you know what, we're going to give you triple what we talked about. It doesn't work like that. It's still a business. So, you know, I just think that things were directed the wrong way, you know, and I'm trying to get everyone on board and kind of understand the situation a little bit better. And everyone I talk to, like, I think they understand it better after. I've asked a lot of people. I've been straight up like, you know, how are you doing in sponsors before and after? And I'd say like 90% of people are saying that they're doing either the same or better now than they were before. And these are guys that had a lot of fights. You know, and some of the newer guys, like a guy like Cajun Johnson, right? So he'd probably be fighting on Fight Pass if he comes in, right? Anytime I've ever fought on Fight Pass, I made like nothing in sponsors. Like, it's no one's watching. So it's like these guys that are just coming in that are complaining that they're not making money, like, well, they'd probably be on Fight Pass and they probably wouldn't be making any money anyways. So it's like, I think that everyone's hearing about like the golden days of sponsors. Like, you know, guys are getting $150,000 to wear a walkout t-shirt, and they're thinking, oh, like that would be me. And it's just not the case. You know, it's just not. I feel like as fighters, you know, as a group, I think we don't have the communication tools to talk to the right people, and instead we just take to Twitter and just start, you know, blasting people.
Do you wish?
I'm unfortunate.
Do you wish that this deal was never made? Do you feel like you'd be better off, and the sport would be better off, or do you think that in the end this is better?
I think this is much better. You know, so I figured out my 8 fights prior to the Reebok deal, I was averaging $24,000 a fight, right? So $24,000. Now I also have to pay an agent or someone to chase down sponsors for me. I have to pay.
The great Oren Hodak,
I have to pay
right?
to have like. Yes, Oren, who's awesome. Oren
Yes.
does great, and I think Oren does better for me than most.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of guys I talk to were making like $6,000-8,000. And they've had a lot of fights in the UFC. So Oren is awesome. You know, so I think I had better management than most.
Okay.
And I'm losing a tiny little bit because so I'm in the 20 tier right now. For like one fight, I think after Reebok I was in, or one or two fights I was in the 15 tier. But I don't have to pay. I didn't have to pay Oren Hodak a piece. I didn't have to pay like all these sponsor deals. They always come together last minute because if there were fights, if I'm fighting this coming weekend, and there were fights this week, some people have deals where they get so much if they win, so much if they do this, like blah blah blah, and like companies don't want to commit to next weekend until this past weekend has happened. So the sponsor deals all get settled up this week, early this week, hopefully. And then banners have to be printed, shorts have to be printed, shirts have to be printed. It all has to be overnighted. Like it ends up costing a good amount of money. So for me, from my perspective, someone's been around for a long time, you know, $24,000, you know, the old way versus like $21,000, you know, for what I get, dude, I would take the Reebok money all day. You know, it's just less hassle, less aggravation. And I'm someone that had a good manager and was doing a good job. Never mind all these other people that were, you know, not doing well at all.
Is there also a case to be made though, like when they say, oh, there was no market anymore, the sponsorship game had dried up, that the UFC kind of helped kill the sponsorship game by imposing this tax, and then all of a sudden these mom and pop sponsors couldn't pay this $100,000 tax, and thus just, you know what I mean? Like if you continue to do that, then the sponsorship, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, right?
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. But here's the thing: is that like, so if so, I think I'm an exciting fighter, right? I have good fights. I'm an exciting fighter. I think that companies would generally want to sponsor me, right? Because I have exciting fights. You end up seeing exciting clips and all these other things. So. But I'm an exciting fighter on a UFC broadcast.
Yeah.
It's not 100% on me. It doesn't matter. If I'm fighting on some big, huge pay-per-view card in like, you know, a co-main event slot or something like that, well, there's a lot of people that are watching because it's me on this card. It's two pieces that go together. It should never have been that, oh, I get 100% of that value and the UFC had nothing to do with it, right?
Okay.
It's obviously it's Joe Lauzon fighting in the UFC.
Right.
You know, if I went to another organization, it's not going to be the same viewership. In the end, it's really the number of eyeballs that are watching you, right?
Okay.
So if I'm fighting on another show that's not doing as well, well, then of course the UFC is entitled to take a piece of that. So that's what they were doing.
What about when this news first came out? Lorenzo Fertitta was there, Dana White was there. They all said that all the money is going to the fighters. The $70 million a year, it's all going to the fighters. I mean, how is that possible?
So I think what they said in the beginning was that they were gonna use some of the money to run, like they basically started almost like a whole new department that runs all that stuff, right? So that $70 million is covering a couple things. One is covering all the product that they're giving us, which is it's expensive stuff, and that was one of my complaints against them. You know, I don't need to fight $150. I don't need to walk out a $150 hoodie.
Yeah,
I'm gonna wear it for about 3 minutes, right? Give me a $30 hoodie,
right?
You know what I mean? And I won't care.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like. So same thing with the shorts. Shorts, I think, are important. We should have good shorts. So that's what we're actually competing in. But like the walkout T-shirt, I don't need $100 T-shirt to walk out for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, and then same thing for all my cornermen and everything else. You know what I mean? Like so, but the $70 million covers paying the fighters. It covers all the product that we're given. You know, the fighters and the corners.
Yeah.
And then it covers paying all the staff, which it is a huge amount of work for them. Like tracking everyone down, making sure they have all their stuff. Getting all the sizing right. I mean, I'm sure that money's flying them out and putting them up and all sorts of stuff. So it's like there's salary for quite a few people that is all kind of built into it too. So I think that the promise was always that, oh, this money is all going to go to the fighters. But they said from the start that money was also going to cover that other stuff. It's not like it's 100%. It's not like this $70 million is going to fighters' pockets. So that was never the case.
You don't believe that the UFC is profiting from this particular deal?
No, I mean, well, so they're absolutely profiting because the sport is getting better. You know, like you look at these other shows, you can't even argue that the UFC doesn't look 100 times better than all these other shows with all these sponsors all over the shorts. Like it's borderline.
I disagree with you. Like you think that the shorts are nice. Like you actually think like from a design standpoint, one black with a white stripe and then one white with a black stripe and a couple of different colors. Like you like that as a hardcore fan as opposed to a boxing fan who like every guy is wearing different shorts. And if you look at another organization, like I think that being unique is part of combat sports, right? Like having your own style, like a Joanne Calderwood wearing the kilt makes her different than her opponent as opposed to everyone looking the same. Isn't that a part of being a fight fan? Like you kind of gravitate to a different personality?
For me, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I want to be defined on what I do, not the shorts that I'm wearing. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to be, you know, so Yeah, I don't think it's a big deal, and I think it looks so much better, without having all kinds of shorts. And then it just looks crappy when you have like people that do sponsors. They have freaking like logos falling off, or you know what I mean? Like they just like it just looks really trashy and crappy. Like NASCAR is like NASCAR looks like the car's a billboard, right? But at least the letters and stuff aren't falling off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think it looked trashy, and I think that the UFC is making money in the end because now we're getting more coverage. It's more coverage on ESPN. All these other things, and they also told us the athlete retreat that part of the reason why they like the uniforms, and the more standard thing is because like ESPN didn't want to go and give all these other companies all this kind of exposure. Like ESPN doesn't want Microsoft to be on Demetrius Johnson and ESPN to be showing the clips and Microsoft getting exposure, but ESPN not getting money. Same thing like the UFC, like why the UFC had the sponsor tax.
Fair.
It's not.
Okay.
It's not okay. It's 100% on me because I'm fighting. It's me fighting on a UFC show that ESPN is going to run clips of. There's a lot of pieces to it.
How do you feel about the tiered system as far as your tenure is concerned? Because you're in a good spot, but like you think of a guy like Alexander Gustafsson, right? He just headlined a show in his hometown of Stockholm. He's at the 10,000 mark. I have a hard time believing that Alex, as big of a star that he is in Sweden, couldn't get more money for sponsorship in a show that he was headlining. I mean, that shows, right?
I'm sure he would. Or a guy like Dan Henderson. Dan Henderson hasn't had a whole lot of fights in UFC lately, So he's obviously making a lot less money. But those guys are getting paid. Those guys that are really, really top, like marquee guys, they're getting more on the front end. Like to me, I figure out like when I think about my show and win money, right? Everything's coming from the UFC at this point, right?
Yeah.
So I have my contract, I'm at 62 and 62.
Okay.
Right? So and I get 20 in sponsors. So I don't think, my show money is 62. My show money is now 82. So it doesn't matter what's coming from show and what's coming from Reebok. It's whatever I'm depositing in my account.
Okay.
I'm sure that Gustafsson, who's a huge name, he's getting a lot more money on the contract end. And it sucked for a little bit. There was like a little time in the middle where guys had signed contracts. They had long contracts. That was before the Reebok deal was announced because it sucks for them a little bit, right? Because they're making a lot less money in the short term for that. But now we're 2 years later. I'm sure almost everyone has signed some kind of new contract or done something, that since the Reebok deal, like most people have. I'm sure there's cases and exceptions, but for the most part, negotiate your contract a little higher, and it makes up for this.
I think Iaquinta is one of those who doesn't fall, and maybe that's why he's upset. But look, let me ask you this. Go ahead.
No, so like Al, I think Al goes about things. I understand what he's saying. I hear him on stuff, but like he goes about things all wrong, and you don't make any friends. Saying F the UFC and all sort of stuff is not going to help him. He's on like I think it was like a 3-fight, like he wasn't eligible for bonuses. It's not going to help him to keep doing this because what's going to happen if the UFC goes and caves into him and gives into his demands? You're going to have 450 guys saying F the UFC. On Twitter nonstop because they think that this is a negotiating. You know what I mean? Like it's just they're gonna make an example of him. Like you can't. What would happen if you got on this podcast and started reaming out all your bosses and everyone that you didn't like? You know what I mean? Or like that's not gonna go well for you. You're gonna be fired. When you talk about the wrong person. Like, and I think he's trying to get fired at this point. I think he's just he's chalking it up as a loss and he's just gonna try to get out of his contract any way he can. But I don't know. I think he's going about it all wrong.
Are Reebok, like as a company, are they unhappy with the deal? Like if the deal was up this summer, do you think that they would say, thanks but no thanks and leave?
Well, so a company that's as big as Reebok, they have like a 2-year production cycle, right? So the stuff that's going to come out, I don't know if it's for this summer or this coming fall, is all the stuff that from when the deal was announced, this is stuff that they were working on right away. Before this, basically this is all the CrossFit leftover stuff. That's why this stuff hasn't been great. Like almost everything you see, everything they're giving us is like CrossFit this, CrossFit that. Almost none of the fighters actually do CrossFit. Right? Yeah. We all have CrossFit people that don't have a sport, right? So, or CrossFit is their sport. Yeah. So we had all like the leftover CrossFit stuff. So now we're starting to get like the actual MMA design stuff, better shorts, better shirts. I got a pair of shorts that is going to be, I think it's in the fall line, that I got a prototype like 2 years ago.
Wow.
When they first announced everything, you know what I mean? Like, and this stuff is really, really good. And it's made for grappling. It's made for this stuff. Like CrossFit, like no other sport is the same as jiu-jitsu and grappling and fighting. Okay. Like it's so different. So now we're just starting to see stuff. So to answer your question about that, I don't think they would want to back out right now because they have like, stuff that's planned, we're 2017 right now. They've already got 2019. That's what they're working on right now.
Okay.
I think that once we get to the final 2 years, then they would start thinking, maybe do we want to start pushing forward. But if things don't change, they're not going to start planning for, when the deal's over. They just be like, all right, when this deal's done, we're done, and we're walking the other way.
I like the way you break things down. So let me ask you this. As you know, because I know you keep up with things, the TV deal is up next year, right? The Fox TV deal is up next year. Currently, the fighters make 0% of the revenue. So if they make $100 a year, $100 million a year, as they currently do, or $400 million, as has been reported that they want to get, you guys make none of that. As you know, in other sports like the NBA, for example, the players make 50%. That's why the Warriors were able to sign Kevin Durant. Their salary cap went up. Do you think the fighters should make a cut of the TV deal? Because yes, it is a UFC TV deal, but you can't deny that there are stars that draw more. There are people, like fans want to come watch you fight because you deliver Holly Holm, et cetera, et cetera. Should you make a percentage? Maybe not 50%, but 5, 10%.
Maybe. I don't really know. Like, I'm not as involved in that kind of stuff. Like, I haven't really thought about it as much. I mean, of course, I want more money for the fighters all the time. So one half of me is like, yeah, we should be getting that. But I really don't know. I think the UFC is in a different place too than these other things. Like that come football season, there's going to be tons of football on Sundays. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what's going on with fights as much. You know what I mean? Like I think the UFC spends a lot more money marketing and all that kind of stuff than I think these other leagues do too. So I think that they make more. These other leagues make more money to start with, but they also have less costs for marketing and things like that. And I think the UFC just dumps a lot of that money back into it. So I really do. Like I've never.
You'd be okay.
I've never thought that like the UFC is pocketing all this money and just putting it in their pocket. I think that they're reinvesting it all the time.
Okay, so
because
you'd be okay if it stayed at 0%.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, of course, I want the fighters to make more money, but I don't know. I don't know. Of course, I'd want the fighters to get a piece of that, but if it's going to happen or not, I don't know.
You've been in the UFC 10 years now. How long do you want to do this for?
I mean, I love training. I love being in the gym. I love getting better. I feel like, every once in a while, like every 4 or 5 fights, I'll have like a, kind of a bad fight, but then I'll have a couple of good ones. And I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy training. I really enjoy, I love going to the gym all the time. I love, working on things. I love improving. I love fight night, fight week. Everything is awesome. I don't know. As long as I'm still physically able to train, I want to keep training. I want to keep fighting. I don't feel like guys are, passing me by. I think it's a really, really tough sport. I don't think it was ever, I don't know. We'll just keep going. We're going to keep going. We'll take it fight by fight. Like I'm not stuck. I don't feel like I have to fight, but I really enjoy it.
Do you have your next fight yet?
Nope, nothing yet. Probably like September. I talked to Sean Shelby last 2 weeks ago, and he asked when I wanted to fight. I told him August. And I was like, well, we're going to Denver and we're going to Mexico City. I think we're the 2 places. And they're both at altitude. I'm like, oh, let's talk about September. Let's point those 2 places. So, we'll see. I'm not sweating it. I'll fight, probably September, I would guess.
And so if a fighter is watching this, what is the message? What as someone who's been on, the front lines, for lack of a better term, who's met with Reebok, who's just there, who I think has a very good handle on all of this, what is the message as it pertains to the current relationship between Reebok and the fighters?
I've been burned by a lot of sponsors in the past, for a lot of money. I'm not worried about getting burned by Reebok. I'm not worried about getting burned by the UFC. I think that, everyone's kind of thinking that they're going to make all this crazy money with external sponsors, and it's just not the case. There's some guys that are few and far between that, like they have like a friend or something like that. And yeah, they're going to get more money or they have like a unique relationship. But for the most part, that's not how it goes, So I think, being more pro Reebok, we want Reebok to make money so that the money's going to come directly to us. I think that complaining on Twitter and all this other stuff, you're shooting yourselves in the foot. It's not going to work out for us. It's just going to, we're going to be fighting in UFC clothes and no sponsor money. An entire piece is going away, and we're going to have no one to blame but ourselves. It's going to be 100% our fault. So smarten up.
Do you think there'll be an association ever in the sport?
I don't. I mean, maybe, but I think everyone's needs are just so different. You get a guy like Conor. Conor's not looking out for everyone else. He's looking out for him. Like all these other guys that are top in the division, like they're all looking at it as like, oh, I've worked really, really hard all this time. I'm going to get what I can get. That's how I feel. And I'm not making as much money as those guys, but I make good money now for my show money to win. But I've had 25 fights in the UFC. I've been here for 10 years. Yeah, I'm going to try to, looking out, of course I want more money for all the fighters all the time, but at the same time, realistic, I'm most concerned what's going on for me. Just like I'm sure every other fighter in there, anyone that says that they're not is lying. They're straight up lying. Everyone's looking out for what's best for them.
But But what if there was like some sort of collective bargaining thing where it doesn't affect your purse, but it affects like the TV deal, the cut, like you all make a cut of that, and so that you all have a collective voice. USADA, right? You guys didn't have a say in the USADA deal. There was no collective bargaining there. They just said, sign this piece of paper, and now you're going to be monitored 24/7, 365. I'm a fan of that. I think there should be testing, but it doesn't affect my life. It affects your life. I think I've seen you tweet that they, knock on your door at like 10 p.m. or 6 a.m.
Yeah,
right?
they do, and I'm happy to see them every time they come.
Okay.
Every time they come, I'm happy. The first time they showed up at my house, it was like 6:30 in the morning, and I was like, "Who is this? Like, who's banging on my door at 6:30 in the morning?" And then I'm like, "Oh, here we go." I'm happy about that. Get everyone. I'm sure I fought guys that have tested positive or were on something. I'm sure it's happened.
Yeah.
Catch them all. That's not like I don't look at that as a negative thing. I think that's a good thing. Get them all. Keep it going. Test me freaking twice a week, every week.
But the lesson is you want to have a say in the matter.
Yeah. I would like to have a say, but
sure.
Yeah. But I just think that, it's like if someone tried to set up an organization with like bare minimum stuff, then maybe it would have a chance. But they're not. Everyone's trying to and everyone's greedy too. There's always 3 or 4 organizations, people trying to sign up different things all at the same time, and everyone's getting ahead of themselves. Like, oh, we're gonna do this organization, we're gonna do this organization, and like all these different things. Is like, and you're just gonna fragment everyone. You need to if you were trying to get everyone together, you need to go like bare minimum just to get the organization started, and get all the fighters to sign on at that point.
Yeah.
And then over time, slowly expand out. Yep. But it'll never happen. It'll never happen. Everyone's fighting for their piece, and everyone's trying to make money, and like, oh, I'm gonna be the one that gets the real. Union to start. It's just never I think it's not gonna happen.
How's your son?
He's doing good. He's taking a nap right now.
Oh, okay.
He's doing good.
Hopefully not next week, but he's all good, right?
Yeah, he's super happy, super healthy. He's super tiny. So he's on he's on human growth hormone. Okay. So because he's like bottom like 1%.
Oh wow.
So he's super tiny, but he's doing great. We got him approved to go to he's got a little bit of hearing loss from the chemo. So we got him approved to go to a school that's near us. It's like super expensive, but the town will pay for it. Wow. But it's basically for kids with hearing loss. But he's going to start that in July. So, but everything's great with him. He's awesome. He's so much fun.
Great to hear that. A lot of respect for you, Joe. Great stuff. I appreciate the insight. Thank you very much for coming on, and I'm happy that we squashed our beef and that we're friends again.
I am too. We'll be BFF again. Sounds good.
Awesome. We'll talk to you soon. There he is, Joe Lauzon. Great stuff from him. It's always great to hear that other perspective. Appreciate him coming on and dropping some knowledge.